the abandoned sky dock hung in silence, drifting above a dead, gray moon. Broken cargo crates and rusted equipment floated weightlessly, clinking softly whenever they touched. The air inside the dock was cold, almost sharp, carrying a scent of burnt circuits and old fuel. Among the shadows, a small dragon hatchling moved carefully. His scales were dull, but his eyes shone like tiny amber lanterns. He had no name yet, or rather he had forgotten it. He had no home, no family, only memories that came in flashes. Memories of wings and stars, of warmth and laughter, all gone now. The hatchling crouched behind a cracked metal container, listening to the faint hum of distant engines. He had survived alone for weeks, scavenging scraps from cargo containers that no one claimed. Other creatures avoided him, sensing the fear in his small body. He had learned quickly that the galaxy was not kind to young dragons. Predators, hunters, even careless humans could end a life in moments. And yet, he felt something stir inside him when he sensed the vibration of approaching engines. A rhythm that was familiar, almost like the heartbeat of his lost family. A ship appeared at the entrance of the dock. It was not like the fast, armed cruisers that often patrolled these sectors. Its design was smooth, careful, deliberate, as if it had been made for traveling with life, not war. Lights glowed softly along its hull, painting the dark walls of the dock in gentle blue and gold. The hatchling froze. His wings twitched involuntarily. Something in him recognized the ship, though he could not name why. A whisper left his throat, barely audible even to himself. "My father once flew one like this." The sound of his own words surprised him. He had not spoken since the world had grown silent around him. Fear and hope tangled together, creating a strange warmth inside his small chest. The ship's engines slowed as it drifted closer to the dock, and a single hatch opened with a quiet hiss. A human stepped out. The figure was tall, with broad shoulders and steady movements. He carried no weapon openly, only a small device that glowed faintly in his hand. The hatchling's instinct told him to run, but something in the human's calm presence held him in place. The human moved slowly, scanning the dock with careful eyes. He did not shout, did not make sudden movements. He looked different from the others who had passed through. The hatchling's tail twitched. Could this human be safe? Could he trust him? Years of survival had taught him that trusting was dangerous, almost foolish. But the human's steady gaze felt like a bridge to something long forgotten. A life before hunger, before fear, before silence. The hatchling took a cautious step forward, then another, his claws scraping softly against the metal floor. The human paused, noticing the movement. "I see you," he said gently, his voice carrying in the quiet dock. "You don't need to hide." The hatchling froze again. Hiding had been his only defense, his only protection. He had learned to survive in the shadows, to vanish when danger approached. And yet, the human's voice did not demand obedience or threaten harm. It only offered recognition. The small dragon crept closer, keeping low to the ground. He sniffed the air around the human, tasting the scent of warmth and fuel and life. It was confusing, exhilarating, and frightening all at once. Memories flickered in his mind. His father, his mother, the way they had flown through the sky together, the feeling of wind rushing over scales, the joy of soaring above the stars. He had not dared to hope for such things again. And yet, looking at this human, a fragile spark of that hope returned. The human crouched to the hatchling's level, keeping his hands visible and open. "You must be hungry," he said softly. From a pouch at his side, he produced a small piece of food, shaped strangely but safe to eat. The hatchling sniffed it, uncertainty written across every movement. Hunger gnawed at his belly, but so did caution. After a long pause, his curiosity outweighed his fear. He edged closer, slowly taking the offered food with careful teeth. The taste was strange but nourishing, and for the first time in many cycles, the hatchling felt his stomach ease. The human watched patiently, speaking in calm tones that did not demand attention but offered comfort. "I am Elian," he said. "I mean you no harm." The hatchling's eyes narrowed slightly, testing the sincerity of the words. Trust was not given freely. It had to be earned. And yet, there was something in Elian's calm, steady presence that reminded him of another time, another life. He tilted his head, studying the human with cautious curiosity. The dock was cold, lonely, and quiet, but for the first time, it felt a little less empty. Outside the dock, the stars gleamed cold and distant, indifferent to the small drama unfolding below. But inside the shadows of broken crates and rusted walls, something fragile began to take shape, a fragile connection between a human and a dragon, one that neither fully understood yet. The hatchling's tail curled around his small body, not in fear but in the first flicker of comfort he had felt in cycles. He did not know if the human would stay or if this moment would last, but he could not deny the pull he felt. The pull toward warmth, toward care, toward something that felt like family. Elian stood slowly, keeping his distance but making no move to retreat. "Come with me," he said gently. "I will keep you safe. At least for now." The hatchling paused, his instincts warning him to flee. But the memory of his father's ships, of flying beside those who trusted him, made the decision easier. He stepped closer, his small claws clicking softly on the metal floor. The human extended a hand, and for the first time in many cycles the hatchling did not run. He allowed himself to be led, guided not by chains or threats, but by trust. The sky dock remained silent as it always had, but the small dragon sensed a change. Something had shifted, a quiet movement in the endless void of space. Perhaps this was the beginning of a journey, one that could lead him back to the stars, back to his family's legacy, and back to a place where dragons could fly free once more. The stars above twinkled faintly, as if acknowledging the small, fragile spark of hope that had been lit inside a homeless dragon hatchling. The hatchling followed cautiously as Elian led him through the corridors of the ship. The walls hummed softly, filled with warmth and light. It smelled different here, clean, alive, not like the cold, empty dock. The dragon hesitated at each step, his claws clicking softly on the metal floor. He had been alone for so long that every sound and movement startled him. He wanted to run, but something in Elian's calm presence told him it was safe, for now. Elian watched the hatchling carefully, speaking in soft, gentle tones. "You do not have to be afraid," he said. "I will not hurt you." The dragon's eyes narrowed. Words were easy to say but actions mattered. He had seen humans before. Most came with weapons, with fear or greed in their hearts. But this one moved slowly, carefully, as if he knew every step could matter. There was no sudden movement, no threat, only patience. The hatchling climbed onto a low platform, curling his small body as he watched Elian from a distance. Hunger still gnawed at him, but so did doubt. His instincts told him to flee, but the warmth and quiet in the ship called to something long forgotten. Memories of flying with his father, of being safe under wings bigger than the sky, whispered in his mind. He had not felt trust in many cycles. Now it seemed fragile but possible. Elian opened a small compartment and pulled out more food. "Eat," he said simply. "You need strength if you are to survive." The hatchling sniffed carefully before approaching. He took the food with cautious teeth, tasting the strange flavors. It was not like anything he had eaten before, but it filled the emptiness in his belly. As he ate, he studied Elian. The human did not rush him or try to grab him. He only waited, watching, patient. The dragon's heart, small and battered, began to feel something it had not felt in cycles: safety. Once the hatchling finished, Elian sat on the edge of a platform, keeping his distance but making his presence known. "You are not alone," he said softly. "Not anymore." The dragon tilted his head, unsure what this meant. Alone had been his life for as long as he could remember. To imagine someone not leaving, not hurting him, was strange and difficult. Yet the words carried weight. They were not promises, only intentions. But intentions could matter more than anything else in the galaxy. Elian extended his hand slowly. The hatchling watched every movement, ready to leap if danger came. He had learned to survive by fleeing, by hiding, by striking first if he could. Trust was dangerous, almost foolish. But the human's hand hovered patiently, not forcing, not grabbing, only waiting. After a long pause, the hatchling stepped forward. His small claws barely touched Elian's fingers, and the human did not flinch. He only smiled, softly, warmly, a simple gesture but one that felt enormous to the tiny dragon. The hatchling stayed close as Elian moved through the ship. He showed him small rooms filled with warmth, soft beds, and lights that glowed gently like stars. Everything was new and strange. The dragon's eyes widened and his tail twitched in curiosity. He had never imagined such places, never thought he could feel safe enough to explore without fear. The human's presence was steady, quiet, and always patient. Each step, each gesture told the hatchling that he could relax even just a little. Later, Elian brought out a small, reflective surface. "Look," he said. The hatchling peered into the reflection and saw his own eyes staring back, bright, intelligent, and cautious. He saw scars, small but clear, reminders of battles he had fought to survive. He saw a creature alone in the galaxy but now, perhaps, not entirely alone. The reflection held a strange promise. That someone cared, that someone would stand by him, that the stars were not so empty after all. The hatchling moved closer to Elian, brushing against his leg in a gesture that was both tentative and brave. Elian reached down, stroking the small scales on the dragon's head gently. "I will protect you," he said simply. "Not with weapons, not with force, but with care." The words were not loud or commanding, only soft, almost like a whisper, yet they carried a power the hatchling recognized immediately. This human, unlike the others he had seen, did not raise a weapon. He did not threaten. He only offered something rare and precious: trust. The hatchling's mind wandered to memories of his father, a great dragon who once soared alongside humans, teaching them to navigate the stars. He remembered stories of humans who had cared, of bonds that had lasted for cycles. Those stories felt distant, almost like dreams. And yet, here in this small, gentle human, he saw a reflection of that past. Perhaps not all humans were cruel. Perhaps, like his father had believed, some still remembered how to care. Hours passed, and the hatchling explored the ship slowly. Elian followed, always keeping a safe distance, allowing him freedom but staying close enough to intervene if needed. The dragon realized he could trust this human, at least enough to remain on the ship without fear. For the first time since he could remember, he did not feel the constant pull of danger. He could rest, he could breathe, he could consider the possibility that not all creatures in the galaxy were enemies. As night fell outside the ship, the hatchling curled near the soft glow of a light panel, watching the stars drift past the windows. He thought of the dead moon, of the lonely dock, and of the fear that had filled him for cycles. Now there was a human who did not raise a weapon, who did not chase or threaten, but who offered protection. And though he did not yet understand it fully, the hatchling felt something fragile awaken inside him. A sense of hope, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he could belong again. Elian watched quietly from across the room. He did not speak, only observed, understanding that trust, once broken, could not be rebuilt quickly. The dragon would come to him in time. For now, patience was enough. And the hatchling, small and wary, had begun to realize that perhaps not all humans were to be feared. Some, like Elian, could be allies, guides, and even friends. And in a galaxy so vast and often cruel, that realization was as precious as any treasure. Outside, the stars continued their endless drift, indifferent and cold. Inside the ship, however, warmth and care had taken root. A small dragon, homeless and alone for too long, had found a human who did not raise a weapon, who offered something rarer than power or wealth: trust, patience, and the beginning of a new family. And in that quiet, unassuming moment, a fragile spark of hope ignited. A spark that might one day grow into something that could change the stars themselves. The ship moved silently through the stars, gliding past distant planets and asteroid fields. The hatchling perched near a window, his amber eyes reflecting the endless darkness speckled with light. He had learned to trust Elian, the human who had not raised a weapon, but questions filled his mind. Why had the human come to the old dock? Why did he show kindness when others showed only fear or cruelty? And most of all, what was this ship? Somehow, it felt familiar, like something he had seen long ago, in dreams or memories that belonged to his father. Elian noticed the hatchling staring into the void. He moved closer but kept his distance, careful not to startle him. "You are looking at the stars," he said softly. "Do you know their names?" The hatchling shook his head. The human's calm voice had a strange effect, soothing, patient, as if it could reach through layers of doubt and fear. Elian reached out and tapped a small panel, lighting up the wall with maps of constellations. Lines connected planets and systems, glowing faintly. "These are the old trade routes," Elian explained. "Humans once traveled them with dragons at their sides. You, perhaps, remember some of it already?" The hatchling's ears twitched and he tilted his head. He did remember, memories surfacing in fragments, like faint echoes of wind rushing over scales and stars passing beneath wide wings. His father had flown ships, not only dragons. He had taught humans to navigate, to sail through the darkness with trust and skill. That knowledge had been lost for generations, but here it was again, alive in this human's presence. The hatchling whispered softly, almost to himself, "My father, he taught humans." Elian knelt beside him, speaking gently. "Yes, your father was part of that time. Dragons and humans work together. You are the last of your kind to carry that memory. That is why you are important." The hatchling's small chest rose and fell quickly. He did not fully understand importance yet. He only understood that humans had once been friends, that his family had trusted them, and that somehow he had been alone until this moment. The ship's corridors were lined with symbols carved long ago. Curved lines and shapes that matched scales and claws. The hatchling recognized them instantly. They were old dragon markings, telling stories of flight, protection, and bonds that humans and dragons had once shared. He traced a claw along one symbol, feeling a strange connection. This is from my father's time, he whispered. Elian smiled faintly. It is. And now you can help us remember it. The hatchling felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. Pride that he carried part of his family's history, sadness that the rest of his kind were gone, lost to time and fear. But Elian did not allow the sadness to overwhelm him. You are not alone, the human said. We will honor what your father taught us. You will not be forgotten. The words were simple, but to the hatchling, they were heavier than any treasure he had ever found. They carried hope. Hours passed as Elian showed him more of the ship. Rooms filled with maps, glowing screens, and tools for exploring the stars. The hatchling touched everything carefully, learning the shapes and smells. He understood a little more with each step. Humans had once flown beside dragons not as hunters but as partners. They had learned from dragons and dragons had trusted them. Now, centuries later, the small hatchling was beginning to realize that trust could happen again. One room held a larger holographic display. A star map appeared, with paths marked in faint gold. These were the routes your father's people taught humans, Elian said. He flew across them many times. He helped humans understand the galaxy. You carry his memory and now you can help guide others too. The hatchling's small wings twitched. He had never thought of himself as important. He had thought only of survival. But here, in this human's care, he understood he might have a role in something bigger, something that could last beyond fear and loneliness. The hatchling's mind drifted back to his father. He remembered flying alongside humans, sharing knowledge, feeling the wind rush past, and seeing worlds for the first time. That memory, long buried, came alive again in the warmth of the ship and the soft voice of Elian. He realized that his father had not only flown ships, but he had believed in humans, believed that they could care, protect, and honor dragons. Perhaps that belief had not been lost after all. Elian crouched beside him again, brushing a gentle hand along his scales. Do you remember the stories your father told you? He asked. The hatchling nodded slowly. He spoke of trust, of flying together, of protecting each other. Elian's eyes were calm. Then let us honor that. Together we can show the galaxy what dragons and humans can do when they trust one another. The hatchling's heart lifted, fragile but certain. Perhaps he had found a partner in this strange human, someone who understood the weight of memory and the power of care. As the ship sailed through the dark void, the hatchling felt something he had not felt for cycles: purpose. Not just survival, not just avoiding danger, but a sense of belonging. He realized that the stars outside the windows were not only cold and empty, they were alive with history, memory, and possibility. His father's time had not vanished completely. It lingered in him, and now, with Elian, it could live again. Night passed in the quiet hum of the ship. The hatchling curled near the warm panels, thinking of dragons long gone and humans who had forgotten. But he no longer felt fear alone. He felt curiosity, hope, and the beginnings of trust. The galaxy might still be full of dangers, but with knowledge, memory, and care, perhaps dragons could fly again, not as hunted creatures, but as partners to humans once more. Elian watched from across the room, not speaking, letting the hatchling absorb the stories and memories at his own pace. Trust, he knew, could not be rushed. The dragon would grow and the time to act would come. For now, the small hatchling had discovered truth carried in the stars, truth that could change both dragon and human futures. A spark had been lit in the heart of a homeless dragon, a spark that, with patience, could one day grow into a flame bright enough to light the galaxy. The ship glided silently through the dark void, carrying its small dragon passenger and the human who had earned his trust. The hatchling perched near a window, staring at the stars as if trying to read them. Elian moved beside him, careful not to crowd or scare him. The galaxy is vast, Elian said softly. It does not notice one small ship, unless that ship carries something it wants. The hatchling's ears twitched and he looked at the human. He had learned that humans often feared dragons, sometimes hunted them and sometimes exploited them. But this human, this captain, had not raised a weapon. He had only offered safety and care. The calm lasted only briefly. Long-range sensors picked up several distant vessels moving toward them. The hatchling froze. The ships were large and imposing, their shapes familiar from stories he had overheard among older dragons. They were patrol ships, authority vessels, and mercenary scouts. They carried one message without words: the hatchling must be surrendered. The galaxy had heard of a dragon on a human ship, and the news spread quickly. Elian did not panic. He kept his voice soft and steady as he prepared a course away from the nearest patrol. The The hatchling crouched low, wings tight against his body. Fear tingled in every scale. "Why do they want me?" he whispered. Elian shook his head. "Because dragons are rare now. They are powerful, and many believe they must control that power. But we will not let them decide your fate." He reached out and stroked the hatchling's head gently. "You are not a prize. You are alive. That is enough." The dragon blinked, slowly realizing that this human was not like the others. He had chosen protection over fear or profit. As the pursuing ships drew closer, Elian activated communication channels. He did not threaten. He did not fire weapons. Instead, he spoke to the leaders of the patrols calmly. "This dragon is under my care," he said. "I will not give him up. He is not a weapon and he is not property. You will find no claim here." The hatchling listened, understanding in a small, instinctive way that humans could stand up for more than just themselves. They could protect life even against overwhelming numbers, even when others demanded compliance. The patrols hesitated, their sensors scanning the ship. They were surprised by the humans' calm confidence. They had expected to see fear, threats, or escape attempts, but Elian remained steady. He did not panic, did not fire, did not raise a weapon. He simply refused to obey demands for the hatchling. The galaxy, watching from a distance, seemed to pause. Perhaps it had forgotten that humans could choose compassion over force. Perhaps it had forgotten that dragons had once been partners, not enemies. The hatchling's wings twitched with growing excitement. He had never seen such courage from a human. He had learned fear, caution, and survival, but he had never seen this. He had never seen one choose care over conquest. Something in him stirred, a flicker of hope that maybe, with this human, he could fly freely and maybe dragons and humans could find trust again. The patrols began to communicate among themselves, confused by the lack of hostility from the ship. One by one they withdrew, choosing to observe rather than attack. The hatchling settled on a platform, watching the stars drift past. He thought of the dock, of the loneliness he had endured, and of the humans who had once flown with dragons. Now, one human had returned that memory and it had changed everything. Elian knelt beside him, speaking softly. "The galaxy will watch us," he said. "Some will test us. Some will try to take what is not theirs. But we will hold our course. You are not alone." The dragon curled slightly, feeling the warmth of care and the steady heartbeat of someone who had chosen protection over force. As days passed, news of the hatchling aboard a human ship spread across the stars. Ships slowed to observe, communications buzzed with curiosity, and whispers of hope drifted between colonies. The hatchling's presence reminded many humans of a time long past, when dragons were not feared but respected, when humans had learned to care for creatures greater than themselves. It was a reminder that history was not lost, only forgotten. And in the quiet moments aboard the ship, the hatchling felt that history returning, piece by piece. Elian allowed the hatchling to explore freely, always near enough to intervene but never forcing him. He spoke of patience and courage, of choices that mattered more than power. The dragon learned that one act of care could ripple across the galaxy, touching minds and hearts far beyond the ship. Even as the patrols observed, they could not deny the simple truth. This human had made a choice, and that choice carried weight. The galaxy had stopped to watch because it sensed something rare, a choice driven by trust and protection, not fear or gain. One evening, as the stars glimmered against the black void, the hatchling unfolded his small wings and leapt toward the viewing window. He felt the pull of the void, the longing to fly among the stars as his father once had. Elian watched quietly, knowing that trust, once earned, could grow into courage. The hatchling's first flight along the ship's corridor was unsteady, but it was full of promise. It was not fear that guided him now, but curiosity, and the beginnings of hope. Outside the ship, patrols continued to watch from a distance, curious and cautious. They could not comprehend fully what they saw, a dragon free, unafraid, traveling beside a human who had not raised a weapon. Some were intrigued. Some were doubtful. But one thing was clear, a story was unfolding, one that would reach the far corners of the galaxy. A story of care over force, of trust over fear, of a human choosing to protect a dragon when the stars themselves seemed to demand otherwise. And inside the ship, the hatchling rested near Elian, finally letting go of the constant tension that had filled his life for so long. The galaxy watched, yes, but the dragon no longer felt small or alone. He felt the beginning of something greater, a chance for dragons and humans to rebuild bonds, a chance for trust to return, and a chance for the stars to remember that protection and courage could shine as brightly as any weapon. The ship drifted through the stars, quiet except for the soft hum of engines and the gentle breathing of a small dragon curled near the control panel. The hatchling had grown stronger over the days, his wings longer, his scales brighter. He no longer trembled at the sound of engines or at the approach of other ships. He had learned to trust Elian, the human captain who had never raised a weapon, and in that trust he had begun to remember his own strength. Elian watched the dragon from across the room, a soft smile on his face. "You are ready," he said gently. "The stars are yours to learn again." The hatchling tilted his head, unsure what that meant. He had survived so long by hiding, by fleeing, by trusting no one. Flying had been a memory, a dream, a story told by his father. Now it felt real but also frightening. Elian stepped back, giving him space, letting the dragon make his choice. The hatchling spread his wings fully for the first time on the ship. The membranes caught the gentle artificial breeze of the corridors, and he felt power in each movement. He hopped along the platform, testing balance, flexing claws and flapping wings. Each motion reminded him of his father's lessons. Lessons of precision, patience, and courage. He glanced at Elian, who nodded, encouraging but still patient. It was not a command. It was trust. A soft alarm sounded from the control panel, signaling a nearby planet with signs of life. The hatchling's eyes brightened. Elian guided the ship closer, careful to slow the engine so the dragon could see clearly. Outside the windows, forests, rivers, and mountains stretched beneath them, untouched and quiet. The dragon leaned close, fascinated. He had flown above stars, moons, and empty space, but this world felt alive, a reminder that the universe had beauty beyond survival, beyond fear. Elian guided him toward the observation deck. The hatchling stepped onto the glass floor, wings outstretched, and felt a rush of freedom. The stars reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he imagined flying alongside his father, alongside dragons long gone, alongside humans who had once learned to care. A soft vibration ran through him. Not fear, not anger, but anticipation, hope, and belonging. Messages began to arrive from nearby systems. Humans and other species had heard about a dragon traveling freely with a human who chose care over force. They were curious, some hopeful, some doubtful. Elian read the messages quietly. "The galaxy is learning," he said softly. "They are watching us. They are seeing that protection can be stronger than power." The hatchling tilted his head, sensing the importance. He had survived alone, but now he realized he could influence more than his own life. The ship slowed near a cluster of asteroids, giving the hatchling room to test flight safely. He leapt from platform to platform, flapping his wings, twisting, balancing, and landing smoothly. Each attempt built confidence. He roared softly, not in anger but in joy. The sound carried lightly through the ship, vibrating walls and heart alike. Elian chuckled, a quiet sound of encouragement. The dragon had found his voice again. As the days passed, the hatchling flew more confidently along the corridors and observation decks. He practiced gliding, leaping, and hovering. Elian stayed close but never restricted him, understanding that freedom was the most important lesson. The hatchling began to explore the ship on his own, visiting control rooms, resting near warm panels, watching the stars. He had learned to trust not only Elian, but the ship itself, the gentle movements of engines, and the paths through the stars. The ship approached a larger station, where humans and other species gathered to trade, share news, and explore. Messages had already arrived about the dragon. Some came to see him, others to study, and some simply to admire. The hatchling stayed near Elian, watching each new face with cautious curiosity. He realized that he no longer felt the old fear that had filled him for cycles. He felt excitement instead, a readiness to meet the galaxy openly. Elian guided the ship into the station carefully. Docking was slow and steady, ensuring the dragon could stay calm. When the hatchling stepped onto the platform, he felt many eyes on him. For the first time he did not hide. He spread his wings slightly, standing tall and proud. Whispers passed through the crowds, humans recalling stories of dragons long gone, and others realizing that these creatures were not monsters, but intelligent, brave, and capable of trust. The hatchling's presence reminded everyone that dragons had once shaped the stars alongside humans, and perhaps could do so again. Children approached cautiously, reaching out with curiosity, not fear. The hatchling lowered his head, allowing them to touch scales softly. Adults watched, some smiling, some in awe. He roared softly, and it was a sound of reassurance, not aggression. Elian stood beside him, proud but calm. Together they were showing the galaxy that fear was not the only answer. Care, patience, and trust could shine brighter than any weapon. Night fell on the station, lights reflecting off the hatchling's scales. He curled near Elian, exhausted but happy. The galaxy had watched, tested, and begun to understand. The hatchling had learned that trust could be stronger than fear, that protection could matter more than force. He had survived, yes, but now he had purpose. To fly, to remember, and to teach others the value of care. Elian reached down, stroking the hatchling's head gently. "You have learned well," he said softly. "And so has the galaxy. They will remember your name. They will remember ours. Together we remind them that dragons are not just legends. They are real, alive, and capable of trust." The hatchling purred softly, a sound of contentment and pride. He had found a partner, a friend, and a new life. The stars outside the station twinkled brightly, indifferent yet beautiful. Inside, a small dragon and a human captain had shown that courage was not always in weapons or battle. Sometimes, courage was in patience, in protection, and in the simple choice to care. And in that quiet triumph, the sky itself seemed to recognize them, honoring their names, honoring the bond between dragon and human, and marking the beginning of a future where trust could rise above fear and dragons could fly among the stars once more.